Ready? One, two, three. Welcome back to When the Pharmacy Closes podcast. My name is Clarissa.
My name is Chris.
And we are your hosts, as always. Today we thought it'd be fun to talk about
some of our horror stories from our times working in the pharmacy.
Just a little background. I think Chris has only had
Inpatient experience.
And I've had a little bit of retail experience, which is like 2 years, 1 year at one company and 1 year at another. And now I'm working at an inpatient setting. I was going to say the name of the hospital.
We've mentioned it before, but
yeah, we have.
Won't. I mean, I guess we won't for it.
It'll probably slip out anyway, so
yeah.
It's okay. But now me and Chris work together in a hospital. Woo!
Woo! So I have some stories, maybe more from inpatient, and I know you have some involving patient interaction. Something that I never get.
Patient interaction. I also have one from a nurse. And then if we still have a little bit of time, we could read some that our fellow techs have written on the internet.
Yeah. Have you seen, or maybe not seen, but have you experienced more horror stories in either setting?
I think retail, because you're dealing with more people in retail. And then, I mean, in the hospital, you're kind of by yourself. Well, not really. You guys are kind of department, you know? Mm-hmm. But I feel like each department sticks to their own department, if that makes sense. Like,
for the most part.
Yeah, unless they have a question for you or you're going to drop off their meds, you know? Mm-hmm. But in retail setting, you're dealing with so many different people a day. You're dealing with your regulars, maybe people that are filling for the first time, just a bunch of different people.
You're even dealing with other pharmacies.
Oh, yeah, other pharmacies, the doctor's office, the insurance, so...
Yeah, that's why I'm happy that I don't work in community.
I mean, it has its perks. I think there's pros and cons to each setting, you know?
Mm-hmm. Should we start with a community or an inpatient story?
Whatever you want, whatever you think is interesting.
What do you think? I mean, mine are mostly annoying interaction based.
Well, I guess I could start off just with, just right off the bat, I guess, just start off with one of the, well, I remember I was a baby tech. I'm going to refer to myself as a baby tech. This was when I was my first tech job. I'm just going to say the company. I was working at CVS. And it was one of my first check. It was one of my first check. It was one of my first tech jobs.
It was one of your first checks too?
Oh, yeah, one of my first checks too. Yeah, straight out of high school, that's where I worked. So I remember I was just starting to learn the ropes and, get acquainted. But I think this was... I worked there for maybe a year or a year and a half. So I think I was already accustomed to whatever we were doing there, the processes and how the workflow was. So I don't even remember if it was when I first started. I think it was a couple months in, but I was still pretty young. I think I was 18 or 19 when it happened. And of course I always worked the register, but we were there and I don't even know what I was doing. I don't think I was helping the customer. It was this man. And if you guys don't know, controlled substances are a pretty serious thing. I think in Texas, I'm not sure if in other places.
Nationally, they're pretty, hence controlled substances. They have to be controlled and watched over.
Yeah. So I know we learned it in law, but I don't remember. I'm sorry, Dr. Davis.
So sorry.
And it's kind of hazy because I haven't worked in a retail setting in a little bit. But I think for some prescriptions like that, especially for opioids, sometimes the doctor will write, do not fill before this date, or, so you can't fill it early. They have the strict.
They'll have is it multiple prescriptions and then they'll say first one filled today, next one at this date, next one at this date?
Well, I think they can only have one prescription for those, but I think he only had one, but we couldn't fill it till a certain date.
Okay.
Or it might have been yours where the system tells us if it's too early. But I'm pretty sure it was a written prescription because they have this special type of prescription paper. Mm-hmm. And it specifically said on there, do not fill before this date. So legally, we can't fill it before that date. So he was an older man and he comes in and I don't remember if I helped him or not. But it just escalated. I think it just escalated so fast because he came in for that specific prescription that we couldn't fill for him at the time because obviously it would jeopardize my pharmacist's license if he did fill it early. And it said on there. So obviously if the doctor's putting a date, there's a reason for the date, Mm-hmm. So we were trying to explain to him that, I'm sorry, sir, we can't fill the prescription. I think the next day was the day we were able to fill the prescription. We're come back the next day we could fill the prescription then, and he would not take no for an
So
answer.
it wasn't even that big of a difference.
Yeah, it wasn't even that big. It's never that big of a difference. But I guess they want it early. Like
It's a little sketch, if you ask me.
No, it is, because some of these people are timely with their medications, and I think my sister has mentioned in the hospital too. Like you can tell the people that they're like, it says every 4 hours, and why aren't you bringing it to me every 4 hours? And my sister's like, well, it says every 4 hours as needed. I don't need to bring it like right on the dot, you know? So that's how this man kind of presented himself to us. So he ended up getting really upset with us. We were trying to calm him down. And then he just threatened to shoot up our pharmacy.
What?
Yes, it was like over a narcotic. He threatened to shoot up our pharmacy and come back with a gun if we didn't fill his prescription.
And how did you, like, who heard that first? Like, who do you tell directly that?
I think, well, obviously, if you have a really good pharmacist, they intervene, right? So I think our pharmacist had intervened, and he mentioned that. So we had to call the police. But by the time they came, he had already left. Like, he had walked out. So obviously I was terrified to go to work. I was like, no way, because especially now with the situation that's happening or that have happened in the past, you never know. Like, you can't take these as empty threats, right?
Yeah.
So I think that they went on the cameras, and then they got like a picture of the man, and we basically banned him from the store. So if he was to ever return, which he did a couple days later, that we would have to call the police, and then they would have to escort him out. So a couple days later, he did come in, and I think he was in a wheelchair too, because he like rolled on in.
What?
And our pharmacist was like, sir, you can't be here. Like, you got banned, like, because you were threatening us, you know? So I think the police were called, and then they had to tell him to like leave the pharmacy.
Like, sorry, dude.
Yeah, like, how are you gonna threaten to, you know? I think that was a pretty serious threat, and I just think it was ridiculous. I don't know.
It makes me wonder, like, how you say, like, he may have just been on top of his medications, but he was, I guess.
I feel like there's no point in which you should threaten somebody else's life.
Yeah.
You know, like, you're gonna get your medication. We're making sure that we're taking care of you well. It's just the policy is in place, and we just couldn't have given to him. It was the pharmacist's license on the line. It could have jeopardized his health, if anything. Maybe there's a specific like reason that we couldn't give him that medication, you know? But yeah, ultimately he was banned from the store. He came back in again, and then the cops came in and took him out. I mean, I don't think they arrested him, but I think they just told him, like, if he was ever seen again, he would be arrested for trespassing. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask a question perhaps everyone is wondering. At least from y'all, did he ever get his medication?
Well, no, he was banned.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So he probably would have had to get a new prescription, because I think we learned we can't transfer those type of medications unless it's been filled once, I think.
Yes.
Or sometimes not even at all. So he probably had to have gotten a new prescription for that medication and just gone to a different pharmacy.
Dude, like, the anger and everything he caused just made it so much more complicated for him.
And I think sometimes I present myself as like a confrontational person, like, oh, let them tell me this. But when it happens in real life, all of a sudden, like, my fight or flight kicks in and I want to run.
You're like, flight takes over.
I'm like,
fight does not win.
No, yeah, I'm not. So yeah, that was my little retail story.
Let me.
Starting strong off the bat.
That's a scary one.
It was a scary one. I didn't even want to go back to work the next day.
I think I don't have anything like that. I have more like patient's life is on the line sort of stories.
Okay, go for it.
I'll start with like the worst one that kind of freaked me out. So like my first year of working at the hospital, you know, usually when you first start working, if you're the new person, you usually get all like the bad shifts or, you know, quote unquote bad shifts.
Yeah.
And at the hospital, we have to kind of choose, since we're PRN, we have to choose which holiday we're okay working with. And I think I had listed I listed the New Year's for sure because I was in town and I was like, nothing really happens till nighttime anyway. And I'm not a graveyard technician.
Well, mainly things happen on New Year's Eve.
That's true. But even then, like, if you're celebrating, it's not till the afternoon.
Yeah.
Or like way afternoon, you know, 9 p.m. So I think I put the New Year's, and then as like my third last choice, I put Christmas because my family and I celebrate on Christmas Eve. Of course, I got scheduled Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day.
Oh my God, they did you dirty, that schedule.
Yes, dude.
But you were probably made a little bit of money.
I mean, I made a good amount that time.
Said cha-ching.
But I was still making like the tech pay at the time, not the intern pay.
Oh, okay.
So, you know.
It was okay.
But so I remember it was on New Year's Eve. It was on New Year's Eve, and I was the 4. I was in the IV room, and I was in there. I remember, I won't say the should I say the pharmacist's name that were there?
Yeah, just say it.
Yeah, whatever. So, okay, Pressy was there with me. So was Lance. And I had just finished, I don't know if it was my batch or I don't know if I was just making fentanyl for the stocks or whatever. And I was about to walk out, and Pressy calls in on the phone, and he's like, whatever you do, do not come out. And I was like, let me just slip some gloves right back on. So I go to the computer, the hood that I'm working in, whatever, and I see this order come up for a dilution for a baby in the NICU.
Okay.
It was a vecuronium dilution, which is a paralytic. And in my head, I'm just thinking, all right, like, let me see if we have a dilution. So let me see if we have the order set so I can put it in, I can make it, they can check it, and then I can prepare the actual order. I believe it was like vecuronium, like 25 mgs or something like that, 25 milligrams. And the dilution we had in stock, like on our system, was a fifth of that concentration.
Oh my God.
So I start, well, first off, vecuronium's not, for us, it's not in the IV room. So I already had to call out, be like, yo, give me these vials.
Yeah.
They brought me one vial.
Oh my God.
I was like, I need 4 more.
So like, hurry up.
The hard part about that was that I had to order 5 dilutions and make 5 separately. So that meant like drawing up the 5 amounts, taking pictures of all 5 amounts. And that made it a much longer process. And then I swear it happened again the next day on New Year's Day too, like the same baby and the same dilution, everything. But I'm taking the pictures of all of my stuff, and I'm just rushing. In my head, I'm like, I'm taking pictures of only what they need, because they're not going to use a paralytic unless they like something serious is happening.
Yeah.
Which Pressy had told me, he's like, dude, the baby's seizing. I was like, oh, awesome.
You're like, why didn't you tell me that from the start?
And I was like freshly trained in there. So I was like,
I don't know how you did that, Chris. I would have been having a panic attack.
And as the 4, I was alone in there.
Oh my God.
I was freaking like those scenes with SpongeBob has like all the freaking hands coming out and he's just going for it. Like I was running. And
or like the SpongeBob scene where like his head is burning, like, you know, like he's like running around in it. Yeah, and that was you.
And I was making it really quickly and taking the pictures, just what was necessary. One of the pharmacists had the audacity to call into the IV room and tell me, like, can you take better pictures?
Oh,
I was like, sir.
You're like, sir, the baby is seizing out there and you want better pictures? I know who it was. I know who it was.
But we'll stop there. But by the time the order got out, because I had to, so I made 5 syringes of the same drug, right? Then I had to combine them all into 1 syringe.
Oh my God.
So that took some time. Meanwhile, all these pictures had to be nice. I think they were taking a while to check some of them, and I was like, check the freaking syringes. Like, you need to hurry.
Yeah.
And by the time, it had been like 20, 30 minutes by the time the order went up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I really hope I did not like cause this baby to die, because that's scary.
Yeah.
And I remember calling my boyfriend at the time, and I was like, I'm so scared. Like, I was like low-key crying in the IV room. I was like, I took way too long to make this, and I'm afraid like it'll be my fault if this baby doesn't make it. And the same thing happened on New Year's Day, and I was like, why?
At least you had experience from the first day.
I know. I was like,
yeah, but that is really scary. It's a lot of responsibility that I feel like people don't know that we have. Because I feel like many of the nurses are like, because I know sometimes my sister's like, oh, do you have to make this one? I'm like, yes, we have to make that one. And I feel like they don't know a lot of the drugs that we have to make, and that it takes some time, you know, and we're not machines. So
I know, and there's times that like they'll call for an order, like they just put in the order, and I understand there are medications like if a patient's coding, like ideally you would get it now.
Yeah.
But a lot of times those also aren't scheduled meds, so it's like you put in the order when you need it, and unfortunately we don't just stock those.
Yeah.
So we'll be like, we'll get it ready as quick as we can, but like, you know, give it time.
Yeah.
Even though you don't have much time. I do it.
Yeah, but I'm glad you're able to do you know if the baby survived or?
That baby did have a lot going on. So at least while I was there for those 2 nights, he was still kicking.
Okay.
Unfortunately, after that, I don't think he made it, but there was a lot going on with that poor kid.
It's so sad. And honestly, I love hospital pharmacy and like what it entails, but sometimes it makes me sad that we don't know the patients and like what we're giving them the medicine for, you know. We never meet them, so I think that's another thing that I'm like, you know, because sometimes I do enjoy that patient interaction, just not when they're yelling at me.
Yeah, that's something I miss out, I think, with working in hospital and not in community. But like you said, the kind of aggressive side of patient interaction, I don't want to deal with that.
Yes, because sometimes I don't know how to interact, if that makes sense.
Yeah. or how to react correctly. Like, you don't want to react the wrong way because it could just make things worse.
Yeah, no, I understand. And everybody's different in the way that they react to. So
Meanwhile, in the hospital, sometimes you gotta have a spine.
yeah, sometimes, but I think it's with the nurses. We try to be like,
I mean, it comes from not all perspectives, all disciplines in the hospital. Things happen, but there are times that we kind of have to. Because I know people have told us before in the hospital, or maybe they've even said it in community, like all you're doing is this. Like, can't you just drop it and like bring it or something real quick? And it's like, no, we have a job too. Like,
yeah, like just so, like they're busy taking care of like 5-6 patients at a time. We're taking care of like the whole hospital.
exactly. Like,
so.
not to sound like a big head or anything, but a hospital kind of wouldn't be a hospital without the pharmacy. So it's kind of like, at least just consider that, we're handling a lot, the machines, the drugs, the running a lot.
Yeah. Speaking of having interactions with the nurses, I'd like to share a little story of one nurse that I encountered that really bothered me. And I think I tell this story all the time.
Go.
Okay, so...
Oh, I also have a nursing one after.
Okay, so I think, well, obviously I'm fairly new at working at the hospital that me and Chris work at. Chris has been working there for how long?
I think about 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just started in, I think it was September or August. So it's been a couple months now. I was doing my, what was I doing? Let me think of the shift. I was either the runner or the Pyxis, but I think I was Pyxis. No, I was the runner. So runner is basically where you take all the medications throughout the different departments in the hospital, right? That's basically what you do.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned Pyxis. So Pyxis is refilling all the Pyxis machines, kind of like a runner shift, but you're just dealing with the machines and not, taking
You do
a run every 30
Pyxis
minutes.
too.
Yeah, but it's not like every 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think I was the runner. And there's this specific floor. Should I say the floor?
No.
Okay, well, there's this specific floor on the 3rd floor. Not going to say the unit.
You basically did.
Okay,
No,
they don't know there's 3 units on the 3rd floor.
That's true.
So 1 unit on the 3rd floor, and I'm in the medication room, I'm waiting to refill the Pyxis, because sometimes when you're a runner, you get like the low critical stock notifications, and you have to go fill the Pyxis for that specific med if the Pyxis didn't take it. So I was there, there's 3 nurses in the med room just gossiping with each other. It was one guy nurse and then like this older nurse, and then the eye roll, did you see? I was like,
oh.
So I'm in there waiting while they're chit-chatting with each other, and obviously they see me waiting there, and they're like pulling their meds, and I like to be courteous and let the nurses pull their meds, because sometimes we take forever,
Yeah.
But I only had 1 medication. Keep that in mind. I just needed to be quick in and out, load it really quick, and that was it. So she's there, and then she was like, do you have this drug for blah, blah, blah? And I was like, no. And she was like, well, it was scheduled. And I was like, well, did you order it? And then she said, no. And I was like, the blank stare. I was so flabbergasted. I didn't know what to tell her. First, she caught me off guard saying, oh, you don't have this order? I was like, no. And then she was like, well, I have a quick question for you then. And I was like,
Oh, the way that was set up just doesn't sound good.
yes, no. She was already having attitude from the start. And I was like, what's your question? And then she was like, if a medication is scheduled, how come it's never here? And I was like, I think I had to swallow my anger that day, because I was about to go off on her, but obviously there was like 2 other nurses in there, and I'm not trying to get in trouble and then have them complain or whatever. So I took a deep breath and I was like, well, if it's not part of our batch, then we're not gonna, it's not gonna be made unless you order it. And then she was like, forget about it.
Was it a drip?
Yes.
Do you remember what the drug was?
No, I don't remember what the drug was. But I don't think it would have been in the batch. Like, I think she said that she had to order it, or I don't even know. But she said, so if it's due at this time. And I was like, well, honestly, I was like, if it didn't come out on our thing and we didn't make it, then you need to order it. And I was like, I told her that we take care of all the patients in the hospital. I wish I would have told her, like, we're not just taking care of your 1 patient, ma'am.
Yeah, but we be strong.
Yeah, so I was
Literally
like, oh
fine.
yeah, well, you can order it. And then she's like, oh, so another thing. And I was like,
You're like, all right.
yeah?
All right.
Yeah. She was like, oh, so another thing. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, we're out of lidocaine patches in here and you guys haven't refilled it. And I was like, oh, well, if it hasn't come out on our critical stock, like low report or our Pixels report, then you must still have some in here. And then she was like, well, we don't. And I was like, and then the other nurses in the room were like, oh, well, there's a second Pixis outside.
Oh,
Yeah, they're like, you can get some from there. And she was like, oh, I'm not even going to worry about it because by the time we use up those, they probably still won't bring any up. And I was like, and then she walked out and then I just stood there because it's kind of embarrassing. Like you're talking to me very disrespectfully in front of like other colleagues, other coworkers of the hospital. And you're talking to me like that and you just storm off. And I thought it was kind of inappropriate. And she was an older nurse. Like I was like, girl, be for real. Be
I
for
would have
real.
looked at the other nurses like, yo.
I literally just stayed quiet. And then the guy nurse, I don't know if you've seen him on that floor.
I honestly,
Mm.
I'm in and out if I'm the runner.
Well, he was like, don't worry. She's like that with everybody. And I was like, well, I'm the wrong bitch.
No.
But he was like, yeah, don't worry. She's like that with everybody. And I was like, well, if she needs something else, then she could call us downstairs. And then I walked out.
I mean, that's true, yeah.
I was like, ain't no way she just came at me like that. I was minding my own business, my little AirPod in, having a good day. And then she said that and I was pissed the rest of the day.
That is one of the scary things about being runner is that you're alone if any of the nurses come up to you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if they ask you for something, it's like, I need to think of something on the spot.
Oh, I have another quick story before you tell your story. I just, what bothers me is when, like sometimes as a runner, I mean, ideally you should take the little cart with you if you have like a really big run. But most of the time, well, I'm always like, why don't you guys take the cart? It would be so much easier with a cart. But I feel like a lame-o if I take the cart because you guys are like, just carry it. Just carry it.
Not a lame-o. It's just like a lot of us just refuse to take the cart.
Yeah,
Shut up. A lot of us just don't like taking it because it's just more to carry.
so literally sometimes your runs are so big that you're just like carrying it. But I remember there was this one time where I guess they desperately needed the medication. I forgot what floor it was.
I think I remember you telling me this.
It just annoyed me so bad. I don't remember what floor it was. Yeah, I don't remember. But they saw me, like, obviously carrying a big, like, run, right? I was with the tubs. I was barely able to, like, scan my badge to get into the room. And the nurses were like, oh, do you have this and this? And then they're, like, digging in my bucket.
You're like,
that pissed me off that day, too. I was like, you see that I'm holding the big run, barely able to walk into your unit, and you're over here like digging in my drips. I was like, I was like, let me check, and I had to like put the stuff down. They're like digging in my bucket.
You're all like trying to bend down
that
in a
had
way.
never happened to me before. She was like digging. I was like, and it made me so mad because I was like, instead of like trying to help me and be like, oh, do you need help with your buckets, and like helping me put it down, and then be like, oh, do you have this one by the way? And then I kind of, like a civil person, just look through little drips. And, here you go. And then thank you, Clarissa. And then, grab the rest of my buckets and then on my merry way. But no, as soon as I walked in, she was like, do you have this drip? Like digging into my
like,
bucket.
girl.
I was like, I should have slapped her hand. Like, get your hand out of my bucket.
With the hands you did not have free.
I know. Okay, go ahead. Say.
You're like, eh.
No, for real. I was like, what did she do? I went home. I remember I went home and told my mom that day, like, she was digging in my bucket instead of trying to help me. She saw that I was carrying a lot of stuff.
We're training her well, though. There are times we're walking around with like a whole Jenga tower of like buckets.
One time my bucket fell and it was so embarrassing.
But no, we've all had that moment. I think one time I remember one time I was refilling a Pyxis in CCU with the 250 ml bottles of albumin.
Oh my God.
And they were in the boxes. So I was like, oh, okay, they're in the boxes, cool. I put in 7. Number 8, which is the last one that I was putting in, I like grab it from the top of the box as you normally would grab a box, like if this is the box, grabbed it like that. And I just saw it slide out slowly. It was a slow motion, like, no. And then I just watched it fall and boom, albumin everywhere. I was like.
And that's like oily, isn't it? Not? Is it like.
I don't.
Like the substance?
I get it.
It's kind of weird, like the consistency.
A little bit. And it was a little more scary because that's something like we throw away in like
special
biohazard or whatever.
How'd you clean that up? Don't tell me you cleaned it up with paper towels.
I did. I literally grabbed like the biggest wads of paper towels I could, and I just started cleaning up glass and albumin.
What is it? HR is typing right now.
And then like one of the custodial staff came in and she was like, no. She's like, that's why we're here. We help you. And I was like, I know, but I didn't want to leave a puddle.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we've all had those moments. I get like with nurses, another story I had. So it didn't involve me being runner. I think I was actually the narc tech that day.
Okay.
No, or was I IV? I was narc or IV, one of those. No, I was narc because whenever I'm the narc tech, I always try to make sure I cover the ORs for the runner. Mm-hmm. So, no, I'm just kidding. I was IV. IV. So that day, I remember it being pretty slow, or maybe not slow, but I guess just the IV room wasn't really popping. And I'm outside the IV room. I'm helping out, helping the runner with their stockouts and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And a nurse calls from the OR saying that they need a medication, and it was remifentanil, which I believe is just like a pain medication, kind of like fentanyl. And it's like a tiny, tiny vial, like 1 ml. And it's in the Pyxis in a locked thingy, and when they pull it for the patient, it'll open up that specific little cubby, and then they can grab it.
Are you talking about the little drawer ones with like the...
Yeah.
Okay.
So she calls us to tell us that she needs it, and like usually we have a pretty good idea of what's already in the Pyxis. So all of us kind of responded the same, or whoever answered her at different points answered the same way, like, oh, it's in the Pyxis. She would be like, well, it's grayed out. Well, we come to find out that on the Pyxis, the whole drawer had failed, or a pocket had failed. So what usually happens in the machines is that if a pocket fails, I think the max that can be in one is like 25, 30 cubbies randomly, or roughly. And if one fails, it won't let a nurse pull from anything from the entire drawer.
Are you talking about the individual ones in the OR? Like where it's like a single drawer that pops out?
No, this is OR main.
Oh, okay.
So there was a failed pocket in there, and it wouldn't let the drawer open where the remifentanil was. So she couldn't get it. And I think anyone who has access to Pyxis has ability to recover the storage space. So I'm assuming they had already tried at this point, so they called pharmacy to see if we could. So I answered, and since it was slow, and I think someone was in the IV room at the time, so I was like, okay, they got it covered.
I'm gonna go check this out.
Yeah, I was like, let me put on my OR scrubs, let me pull one of my friends or my coworkers, and let's go together because I need a witness since it's a narcotic.
Yeah.
So actually, I think it was the remifentanil itself that was a failed pocket. So we go, and it turns out like the drawer wouldn't even open. At that point,
I can imagine you guys like banging on the drawer.
Well, I mean, we were like pulling at it. We were giving it little like, come on.
Little love taps.
But it wouldn't open. So at that point, we have to put in a ticket. We have to get actual Pyxis people to come out and fix it.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So we come back, we call the OR. We're like, hey, we're looking for the, I guess, OR tech or nurse having this patient, whatever. We talk to her and we're like, okay, the pocket is failed. Our next step in like the process is get the patient's ID and dispense it directly from pharmacy. So I call her, we're like, we need the patient's ID and then we can go ahead and take it. Or you can go ahead and pick it. I messed up there. You can go ahead and pick it up from pharmacy, or we can even take it to you. I offered to take it to her. Keep that in mind. She did not, to save anyone's life.
What was she? She was a nurse?
I think I want to say an OR nurse or OR tech.
Okay.
Not one of the surgeons for sure.
Okay.
But just like for some odd reason, I don't know why, she did not want to give us the patient's ID number. She was like, just come fix the Pyxis. And I was like, I know you want it from the Pyxis. Like I would tell her, I was like, I know it's better from Pyxis, but the Pyxis isn't working. We can't fix it. So we're going to dispense it directly from pharmacy, but we need the V number so we can print a label for it. V number is just their ID number. So she did not want to give it to us, and she hung up in like anger. And I was like, okay, don't get your medication then, whatever.
So did she ever get it, or?
Well, she went through 4 of us. And 4 of us.
For the same issue?
Yeah, she kept calling because she needed the medication. And I think 3 techs and 1 pharmacist, and we all told her, like, it's not working, we need the ID number. Come pick it up. Mind you, probably in this entire time that she's refusing.
She could have had her medication already.
Exactly. And in the time she's refusing to give us the patient's ID number, it's probably been like 30 minutes to 45 minutes at this point. And if she just gave us the ID number, it's as simple as maybe 5 minutes. We just have to go into the patient's profile, print a label, and get
And
it
then the
done.
ORs are like literally on our floor, so we could have just.
And I offered to take it to her. And I think it took finally like the fourth person, like a pharmacist, because, most of the time when they call the pharmacy, it's technicians that answer. I think when a pharmacist finally told her the same thing, she finally accepted it. But she came and picked it up. She was just like, snatch. And I was just
did?
like, and I was like, sign.
Have you seen her since then?
I'll see her. Well, no, I have an idea of who I think it was, but I never really fully got a look at her.
What the heck?
But like she snatched it, and I was like, sign the paper, sign it.
Did she sign it?
Well, yeah, I was like, girl, you know the protocol, sign.
What the heck?
Because if you lose it, that's on you, not me.
Oh my god, no way.
So yeah, I remember that day. I was like, why?
feel
Like, what is your grudge against the pharmacy or
No,
something?
for real. Not after our scores that they gave us. Shoot. I don't know. And then I just don't know. Sometimes I just don't know how to react to like stuff like that.
Those are the moments that I say like you have to have a spine.
Yeah, you just gotta breathe it out.
Because I think at
And then we
first,
complain about it later with each other.
Because I think at first I would answer her like, I'm sorry, let me go ahead and check the Pyxis.
Yeah.
And then I went to check it and I was like, I'm sorry, it's not going to work. Like I was being genuine, like it's not going to work. This is what we're going to do. And then
then
at
I
some
feel
point,
like-
oh, wait, what?
I said like I wanted to say that I feel like us in the pharmacy we're pretty good at making sure everything gets fixed, and we're very what is it? Not
I'm not sure.
accommodating. Like we're pretty accommodating to try to get everything done for the nurses or like whatever they ask for, you know?
The good thing about the pharmacy is there's a bunch of loopholes, if that makes sense. Not loopholes, because I mean, they're all like legal actions you can take in the pharmacy, but alternatives.
Like ways that we could do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember with her at some point, I just had to kind of be like, no, it's not going to work. This is the only way we're going to do it. And she still didn't want to take it. I was like, you know what? You do you, boo.
said.
You do you.
He said.
No, she said.
Oh, she said.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. And then should I tell another story? You got another one.
Go for it.
Why do I have so many encounters? I'm literally the nicest person ever. So maybe I just catch them at the wrong time of day or something.
Maybe, or it's a stressful day. Unfortunately, stress makes people mad.
This one's not even that bad of a story, but it was another specific floor that I think I always complained to you about. You know which one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anyways, for this specific floor, we have to prepare oral syringes, and basically the pharmacist checks them. Once you're done drying them up, you put the labels, you separate these syringes in like bags by the patient, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, when I went up there, I don't even know if I was delivering the syringes or I had gone up another time, I think, to deliver like a TPN or like another important med that the baby needed that they kept calling for. So when I went up there, sometimes I like to be nice to those specific nurses, because sometimes putting them in the cubbies I don't really like to do, especially if it's like a TPN or something like that. So sometimes I'll go up to the nurses, but they scare me there. They're like intimidating, those nurses. But anyways, sometimes I'm like, oh, where can I find the nurse for this patient? And they're like, oh, they're over there. So then I went, and that's how I like to be accommodating. Like, oh, let me just give it to them directly, you know, so that they don't have to go search in the cubby, leave what they're doing. You know, they have it here on their little desk. You know how they have the rolling desk there? So I went up to one patient, and then I gave them their meds, and then I went to the other nurse, and I had already gone up to her previously. She's like, yeah, put it there. So this was my own second time back with the same nurse. And I knew that I saw her, she was attending to the patient while I was there, right? So I mean, I think you can multitask. I mean, in this job, I'm pretty sure you can multitask, right? So I went and I was like, oh, I have this medication for this patient. And silence. Nothing. No acknowledgement. Silence. I was like, I know she heard me, because she glanced at me. She was like,
oh.
She looked at me.
I thought like she maybe just didn't hear you. No, she reacted.
Yes, she was dealing with the patient. And then I said, oh, I have this medication for blah, blah, blah. And then she said, and she kept working. And I was like, in my head, I was like, so you want the medication or not? You want the medication or not? So I wasn't going to say it again. So I was like, okay, you don't want the medication for your patient? So I just left it there on her desk and walked out. What am I going to do?
Well, yeah.
She didn't want it.
She probably just expected you to leave it.
Maybe, but she could have been like, oh yeah, can you just put it there for me?
That's one of my pet peeves in, at least when it comes to interprofessional communication.
It's like, yeah, I work
Like,
in the pharmacy,
communicate.
but yeah, at least be like, oh, thank you for bringing my med, you know?
Yeah, even if you, I mean, not thank you would be nice, but even if you don't say thank you, just be
Just
like, oh,
acknowledge
cool.
it.
Or be
Yeah.
like, oh, like, thanks. Or
Yeah.
like, leave it there.
I don't know. She made me mad that day too.
I remember how you were talking about the Pyxis right now. I've had a similar, not them reaching into my bins, but I remember I was Pyxis, and sometimes those Pyxis lists are long, and you're refilling for quite a while. So it's like, I understand if a nurse comes up to me and they're like, hey, can I just pull something? Yeah, let me log out real quick. Go for it. But when they say, hey, can I pull something? That's communication. Thank you for telling me. I remember this one time refilling one of the machines, and a nurse just kind of like, I'm refilling right here, and she's like in my back corner, and silence, nothing, not saying anything. And in my head, I'm just like, you're very awkwardly close to me.
Well, sometimes they'll just let you do whatever you need to do, and then they'll pull their medication.
Oh, yeah, well, okay, you would think that, but I was there for a good 30 minutes
my God.
with her in my corner.
Oh,
And she's just standing there, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, if you need the Pyxis, say something.
maybe she was afraid to tell you, because sometimes I'm afraid to tell them.
At the time I had just started, I was a little 20-year-old.
Yeah, okay. Then.
Like, if I was intimidating to her, that's sad. But
If you're intimidating, you're an intimidating man.
I don't think so. But I remember thinking in my head, I was like, and even going down and telling like one of my coworkers about it, I was like, if you need the Pyxis, just ask. Like, I'm not going to say no, or like say like, hey, I need that. Like, if it was urgent or something, like, because when I finished, she went like, "Ugh," when I finished. And I was like, if you said something, I would have let you in.
Yeah.
But did you give me any indication that you needed the Pyxis? No.
No.
So what am I supposed to think? Like, oh, because you're standing there, you need it?
Yeah.
Like, no, talk to me.
I don't know. And this is not us complaining about our profession or about our job. I feel like it's making us seem like we're just complaining. But sometimes it's having, and I know we've talked about it in class, like sometimes it's nice having a little appreciation for our profession. Because I feel like a lot of people overlook it. Like, oh, they're just from pharmacy, you know? But I feel like sometimes we are the backbone of the hospital. I mean, nurses play an important role. I mean, all healthcare professionals play an important role in the hospital, but sometimes I feel like we're overlooked, and I think we're one of the most important working parts of the hospital. So this isn't us just complaining. It's just, I guess, encounters that we've had that I guess are proof to whatever we've learned in class, and like how sometimes the career path is overlooked.
And I'm sure that every profession goes through the same things.
Yeah.
But we're just pointing out that why am I glitching? No, we're pointing out that this episode is called Horror Stories. So
Yeah.
like we're specifically pointing out the bad things we've experienced in pharmacy. But it's a minority compared to the rest of the good things, I think.
Yeah, I really like it. I enjoy working in pharmacy.
Me too.
I don't think I have any more horror stories from community. I feel like, oh, they're not really horror stories. I think I just remember people like yelling at me all the time.
Well, that's pretty sucky too.
Yeah, like when COVID was going on, I had this one lady that apparently she had an appointment. Like, because, you know, we were kind of strict doing the COVID testing. Like, you had to have an appointment because we would get like a lot of them in a day, and it was kind of hard to keep up. So we would kind of limit the drive-ups. And we were closing before lunch, and she missed her appointment because she was in the line. So by the time we like closed and cut off her car, she didn't make it to the front. So we were like, ma'am, you like missed your appointment. And she was livid.
She was like, I did not, you did.
We were livid. She was livid. She called the front of the store, like blah, 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 blah. And then we came back, and then my pharmacy manager was like, just test her. Like, she's giving us like she's making a huge fuss, just test her. And it wasn't even me testing that day. They were like, Clarissa, you test her. And I was like,
You're like,
I feel like I was taken advantage of because I never say no. I'm kind of like, you know, I'm a people pleaser. So they're like, you test her. And she was all giving me attitude. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I wasn't even the one testing. So then that was one. And then I remember at the CVS that I worked at that we had a lot of people stealing. I think just because of the location of the store. There was one time where we had this guy named Mike, and he's like this big dude. And this girl, there was in front of the register, there was an aisle like right in front of us that you could see like straight down the aisle. And she was being a little suspicious. Like, she was just there like hanging around the aisle for a little bit, and I think she grabbed something, and then Mike was like following. I was like, what are you doing? Because he was just like, he's like, I think she's stealing. So like I think I don't know if it's everywhere, but I think they train us like not to go after the person that's stealing because they can hurt you or. But this man did not care. He walked out of the pharmacy and then he was like, he confronted her and she was trying to steal.
Oh shit!
So I remember that. And then what else? Oh, did you hear that? I said what? But I think it's just mainly a lot of people yelling. Oh, one time this lady made me cry.
I feel like I remember the story, but refresh it.
Okay, so it was, again, I feel like all my horror stories were at this CVS. Because I moved to Walgreens and there wasn't as many horror stories. But also at the same CVS, we had this Spanish-speaking lady. There's no bias against her speaking Spanish. I think it just adds to the story. Or maybe it doesn't. It added to my frustration, okay? So she comes in, and this is when I first started. So obviously I was working in the front register a lot. And she was so regular. I remember seeing her come in like other times, and she was kind of nice, kind of feisty. But this day she was so mad. I don't know why she was so mad, and it wasn't even my fault because I'm just working the register, So I think first, I don't think her medication was ready. Like something happened where her medication wasn't ready, and we were like, "Señora, blah blah blah, like tu medicina no está lista, like your medication's not ready, but we can get it ready for you in like the next 10 minutes." Right? So we were like, okay, this was on us,
She's a waiter.
Yeah, she's a waiter. I remember that.
Red bands.
Yeah, but we were trying to be accommodating because I think we were behind that day. I can't really remember, but we were gonna get it out for her in 10 minutes, but she was already mad. Like she was mad. So when I called her back up, she pays with cash, and baby cashier Clarissa was like, "Oh God, how much change?" Like,
no.
But I didn't give her the wrong change, okay? But she paid cash. She was already upset, yelling, blah blah blah. And then I gave her change, and then she's like, what did she say? I was trying to say it in Spanish, but basically she said, this isn't the change I wanted. And I was like,
I wanted?
Yeah, I was like, huh? And then I was like, that's your change. Like, it's correct. Count it again. Like, I made sure that, because she was already upset, so I wasn't trying to get anything else wrong. She's like, this is not how I wanted it. And I was like, well, how do you, I was already flustered at this point. And then she's like, I wanted it like 5 5s, 4 1s, but she was like specific on the change that she wanted, and I had just given her, because you try to typically not give people a lot of bills, because nobody wants like a bunch of bills. But she was like, that's not how I wanted it. I don't want it like this and this, like, why didn't you give to me? And I was already frustrated, and I had like, in the retail and CVS, like once you close the drawer, you kind of need to call a manager to come and open it back up for you. And her transaction was already done, so when she said, this is not how I wanted my change, I was like, at that point I think I was already like up here, and I was already frustrated, and she didn't make me cry because she hurt my feelings. I think I just started crying because she had frustrated me. Like,
in front of her?
Not in front of her.
Oh, okay. I was like, no.
It was almost in front of her, because I turned around to my pharmacist, and her name was Rukayat. Shout out to Rukayat. She listens. She was one of my favorite ones. So how it was set up was like, it was the register, and then right behind you was the pharmacist station. So you would turn around, and there was like a counter. You know how like at CVS it's kind of like up?
Actually, I haven't been to a CVS yet.
Oh, well, like the counter is kind of like an island in the middle, and like it's like, so like say this is the computer, and then there's like a countertop above it, like kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of weird to explain. But anyways, she could hear me having the commotion, and I turned around to Rukaya, and I was like, and I think I was already teary at this point. She's like, what's wrong? And I was like, somebody else needs to get her. I was like, somebody else needs to get her, because I'm frustrated and I'm about to cry. She's like, okay, go to the back. So then I walked to the back of the pharmacy, and then the store manager comes, and then he's like, what's wrong? Like, what happened? And I'm like, at this point, like the tears are already streaming. Like, they're just like hot tears, when you're frustrated and you're just crying. And then I was like, I closed the register already, and she wanted the change a certain way. He was like, don't worry. He was like, go take a break, like go catch your breath. He's like, I'll go and open the cash register and give her the change she wants. And yeah, so she got the change she wanted. By the time I got back, she was gone. But I remember like turning around to Rikaya, and I was like, somebody else needs to get her.
You're like, I'm about to cry.
Yeah, I remember speed walking to the back. I was like, on a mission. Yeah, and then
you're like, no one see me.
Yeah, everybody was like, what's wrong? I was like, she just frustrated me.
I just need a moment.
Yeah, that was my breaking point, when she was like, this is not the change I wanted. I was like, what do you mean that's not the change you wanted? And then she started listing the bills she wanted. I was like, lady, how am I supposed to read your mind? Like, if you had told me before I closed the drawer, I think she was just trying to pick at me, you know? Like, I think she could already tell that I was frustrated, and she was just trying to, like, yeah.
You were like, oh.
Yeah, and then there was already a long line behind her, so I was kind of already panicking, you know? So I was like, somebody else take this lady, please. But yeah, that's one of the story. Another
the fact
story.
that you like turned to your pharmacist, you're like,
it was like a slow turn too, like in the movies, or like a dramatic turn. I was like the pain on my face. I was like, I think I told her like, un momento, and then I turned around.
you're like, hold on.
Yeah, and then they ended up helping her. The store manager helped her.
That's funny.
You know.
I have like one more small one.
Okay.
That kind of just relates to, I don't know if y'all have seen those TikToks about hospital pharmacy where they're like, how I picture it. And then it's like a nurse calls the pharmacy. They're like, hey, I'm looking for this medication. And then the pharmacist is like, oh yeah, we sent it up. Have you checked the tube station? Have you checked the patient bin? Have you checked the room? Have you checked the patient cart? Have you checked the fridge?
Yeah.
Accurate. Like the number of calls we've made that are that way is too many to count.
Yeah, because sometimes you can remember taking and they're like, why isn't it here? And it's like, well, did you check?
Yeah, so that happened one time. It was one time that me and Daisy were doing graveyard, and I was taking usually the way we do graveyard is we get everything ready, Pyxis, the batch, all of it, and then we take it all up at once. We split it. And I had the critical unit, so I took everything for ICU, and I left a cubis in for a patient. And at the time I had finished, so I went to meet Daisy and finish her part of the run with her. And the pharmacist texts me, and he's like, hey, did you take a cubis into this patient? And I was like, oh, yeah, I left it there a while ago. He's like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I left it in the patient bin. He's like, and it was for this room. I'm like, yes, it was for that room. And he's like, can you go ahead and check the nurse says she can't find it. And I'm like, okay. So me and Daisy go back, and we go look in the patient's bin. I reach in. Ooh, what do you know? There's the medication.
Well, it's because sometimes when we leave the medication, you can't see it. So that's why I like leave the little tail of the drip out so that they know there's something in there.
Grab the bin or something.
Yeah, you're right.
And then, so they called that night, right? And Cubicin is only good for 12 hours once you make it. So he, I never actually saw who the nurse was because I actually did go looking for the nurse, telling them like, oh, hey, it's in the bin. No, I was going to give them the drip because they were looking for it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find them, so I left it in the bin again. Me and her were doing graveyard again the next night, and I'm taking the batch, whatever. I go to the same bin because I did ICU again. It's still there.
Oh my God.
I was like, okay, not only did you not look for it correctly, but you apparently needed it and instead let it expire.
Yeah, I don't understand when they do that.
I went back to the pharmacist that night and I was like, the Cubicin is still there. He was like, no freaking way.
And then I feel like it's just a waste of meds.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, that waste isn't a big thing in the hospital, but
it's not. I remember in retail, they'd be like, you don't let it happen again, okay? We're wasting money here. But here, we're like, oh, it expired. Let's throw it away.
Like, oop, it was in the bin and we don't know how long it's been out of the fridge. Could have been a minute.
Just
Trash.
toss it. Yeah, it just blows my mind.
It's safety.
Well, I think that was a good little episode.
I think so. Many stories, but we'll just have to do one with all the good stories as well.
Yeah, we can do
balance it out.
The stories that touched our heart. Just kidding.
I'm like, aye.
Well, sometimes there is heartwarming stories or
For sure.
good days that we have at work.
I've had interesting ones too. Like just not good, not bad, just weird.
Just weird, yeah. Just busy sometimes.
I think even one time we had like someone come in to the hospital pharmacy looking for their prescription.
Oh.
Like as if it was a CVS, and we were like, no.
Like, that's not how it works here. We're not UMC. But yeah, I think that concludes today's episode. Thank you again for listening. I just want to give a shout out to our other social medias. So if you'd like to follow our Instagram, it's When the Pharmacy Closes.
If you want to follow our YouTube, it's at RxClosesPod. And our TikTok, once we start posting on it more consistently, is WTPC.pod.
All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, and if you're not, thank you so much for listening.
See y'all next week. Let us know some topics y'all would be interested in.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.